go.
Oh, I got it.
Recording in progress.
I got it.
All right, great. It's raining.
Yeah.
Seems strange for August for us. Yeah.
You know what's strange is that nobody's cameras are on. Is this the new update to Zoom?
No, it would have updated them before they could even join.
Interesting. Because we always have people that we can see.
There you go.
Oh, whew. Michelle. Okay, Gina.
Oh, they're all being shy.
Oh my God.
Just being shy.
Here we go. All right. Got Kathy. Maybe Kathy Christie is like, Kathy, are you ready to dance or something? Is that why you're standing? She's like, what? What did you say to me?
I'm sorting clothes today while I watch.
Oh, that's a good idea. Just make us feel like, you know, we're just enjoying ourselves, but you're going to fold laundry. Great.
I'm kind of with Kathy. Under normal circumstances, I have 5 things going as well.
I definitely have many things going on at once right now,
Yep.
including laundry on the clothesline.
There you go.
Look at Margaret Schroeder brought a friend.
It's Nan McCoy and her sister Margaret.
Nan,
Nan.
Yeah.
how you doing?
Oh, I'm alive. I'm here. In
Okay, well,
Wisconsin.
that's good. I'm so happy to see you're here.
Yeah. Well, I've missed seeing all of you.
Well, now you're here, and
All
all is
right.
well in the world. Yeah.
Looks like
My
Amy.
first indigo pigment. Thank you for all who helped.
Woo, very
Ooh,
nice.
Good job, Janet.
I know, I'm so excited.
Very nice.
All right.
Yeah, there's just indigo happening all over. I love
I got
it. There's Marie. Are you wearing that
Oh,
special little
ah.
outfit?
Listen, I wanted to thank you for helping me with the combination of wax and stain. I stain the surface and then I paint with the wax on top of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
great.
So I'm delivering a big show tomorrow. So I'm still in my house coat.
Oh, good luck with the show.
I want to see it.
Your phone card.
I'll take pictures of them.
Yeah.
Well, I have some pictures, but as a matter of fact, I have wax melting and I just finished staining the last one.
Oh, make
Oh,
sure
you're
that's off.
busy.
No, I can see it. It's right in front of me. I had to move
Okay,
my
yeah.
studio
We don't-
inside because it's so hot here.
Yeah, we don't want any fires live documented on Feedback Friday because of
No.
mishaps. That is not what we
Yeah,
want.
no,
No,
none of
No,
that.
Kathy.
No. Yeah, all the electrical appliances are off right now.
Is your stove off?
Yeah.
Is
Fire
your
extinguisher
curling
is
iron
good.
off?
Yeah.
Curling iron, yes.
Curling irons. Your
Okay,
hot-
Amy, it is 9:03. Shall we get started?
Yes.
Are you ready? Is the
I-
band ready? Is
hold
the
on,
dance collective
I'm
ready?
gonna go to the green room and talk to them, but I just want to make sure everybody's muted. If you guys
Muted, and where is the choir? Oh,
one's muted. I see.
there. Oh,
by level.
and the supermodels are here. Okay, we're good. Let
Supermodels. Oh, I didn't. Okay, hold on. Let's just make
me invite
sure.
everybody.
Okay.
All right, count
It's
us
just
in.
us. Just us. Okay. I'm not gonna mess up today, Keith. All right, here we go. Okay. And
Well, it's the end of the week. Now where you been? Well, now it's Feedback Friday, so come on in. Come sit down and stare at your screen. We got a presenter that you never seen. We're Feedback Friday, we're on the loose. We'll be the train, you be the caboose. It's Feedback Friday with Kathy and Amy. Mashed potatoes and the gravy. It's Feedback Friday all day
that was perfect. You did it.
I did it.
Welcome, everybody. Hello. Happy Feedback Friday. This is episode 104. Feedback Friday, for those of you who don't know, is our weekly show where we speak with artists. God, who do we not speak with? Artists, activists, historians, scholars, astronauts. We haven't spoken with an astronaut yet, but we will.
Yeah.
People are looking at color from all aspects of life and all different perspectives. So thanks for joining us. I'm Kathy Hattori, president of Botanical Colors, and joining me is Amy Dufault, our director of communications. And I just want to talk about a few things that we have on tap, and then I'll introduce our speaker and we'll get started. Just a few things of new stuff on the site. We've got a classic mushroom field guide called The Rainbow Beneath My Feet. It's been out of print, or kind of paused, I guess, for quite a while, and we were able to finally get the some publications of that. So check that out. We have been introducing a new cold water mordant called aluminum triformate. We just restocked for the third time, and I'm teaching a kind of introductory informative class for 1 hour on Wednesday. Amy will have all that information in the chat. We've got a sale on our dye materials. These are the raw products, such as the roots, the bugs, the berries, flowers. Our new crops are coming in, so we're definitely going to move out the 2021 harvest and get to 2022. Also, Keith Recker, our guest today, has a book that is launching in late October. We have it on the site for pre-order, so don't worry about it coming in October, early November. It's going to be amazing and beautiful, and you can order it now. Let's see, one last thing. Oh, we're hiring. If you live in the Seattle area, we have an operations position in our warehouse available. Check it out and come talk to us about it. It is part of our growing company, so we'd love to have you join us if you're so inclined. And that's it for all of our announcements. And let me just talk about our show today. We have and are so pleased to welcome writer, editor, trend, and color forecaster, and total wise person, Keith Recker. Keith is joining us from Pennsylvania, and he's going to be drawing from the chapters of his soon to be released book called Deep Color. Keith's talk looks at the positive and the negative layers of meaning that are maintained by Black, red, and blue. Through examples from history, both remote and recent, the messages telegraphed by these colors become clearer and much more interesting. These three colors are just a preview of what is in Deep Color, and the book itself runs through 9 color families, but in the Q&A period, we'll be able to touch on all of them. So other than our housekeeping hints, which is everyone's going to be on mute for the presentation, we'll open it up afterwards so you can say hello. We are recording this presentation, so that will be available on our YouTube channel for those of you who want to revisit it, or somehow if you're missing this presentation, you'll be able to see it later. And Amy is the moderator, so once we're at the end of Keith's presentation, she will ask you to put your questions in chat, and then she'll ask Keith the questions, and we'll have a lively conversation after that. So without further ado, I just want to say thank you, Keith. Welcome. We're so pleased to have you.
Thank you. It's so nice to be back with you. I think the last time we spoke, it was considerably colder and gloomier. So this is a nice change, right? To be talking in August in the summertime. I have to say, this is the first time that I'll be talking about this book. This is the first of a few lectures that I have booked between now and November. And it's about this book, right? Which probably looks backwards in your screens, but this is my one single advanced copy. I'm super excited to be able to hold this book. It was a hard labor, I would have to tell you, to do the research and to digest it and even bring it within the 340 some pages of text with illustrations here. Because at the end of the day, you will already know this on a factual level or an intuitive level. The history of color is the history of humankind, right? Color is such a tool for us to organize our thinking about what comes to us every day. So maybe when we were hunter-gatherers, color was an organizing principle based on ripeness and type of food, and perhaps even hints of what was maybe lurking in the grasses around us. But now, in a world that's motivated by thousands of images that come to us every single day, marketing images, photographs, clothing, the cues people send with their clothing, we use color as an immediate information giver, as something that informs our perspectives so quickly. I think the last time we talked, I mentioned a statistic that the Pantone Color Institute uses, that 93% of a decision to purchase is based on visual information, and 85% of that is color. And those immediate messages that come to us through color, we don't even think about them. This sort of mystical immediacy prompted me to start the book with a quote from Claude Lévi-Strauss, a very famous 20th century philosopher. He made a remark in trying to explain why he felt that myth was so important to explain humankind. He said, myths operate in men's minds without their being aware of it. And I think that's how color is for us, right? Color makes us feel, color communicates, color demands, color pushes, and we don't really think much about it. It's just happening. So this book was a way for me to start to understand that better for myself. The book also has its roots in a series of workshops that I gave at my daughter's high school. They have a unit on media literacy. So enabling students to take a step back, question the framing of the story, the format of the story, the source of the story, an over-reliance on certain metaphors and under-reliance on fact-checking, to really be critical of the information that they are receiving on a regular basis. So an old friend of mine asked me to come in and deal with color as one of the ways in which media operates upon us. And I write about it in the introduction. It was one of the most moving experiences as a color person I've ever had. The kids sat up straighter. I mean, these are teenagers, right? So everybody starts off like this, like, oh yeah, sure, now you. But the kids sat up straighter and started to ask really penetrating questions, some really hard questions sometimes too, about why colors mean what they mean and why do they still command the kind of attention and metaphor that they still command. Trying to answer their questions thoroughly demanded a lot of research and a lot of thought. So I hope each of my talks with them got better. But at the end of the day, I couldn't stop looking. So my talk became Deep Color. So let me share my screen. All right, and let me go back to the beginning. How do I do that? All right, so guess what? You get a little treat. Amy, you knew something was going to go wrong, and this is what is going wrong. Hold on, it'll just take a second.
Told you it's always something, Keith.
Right? Golly.
God.
I promised Amy I had debugged my entire situation today.
Everybody
but
close their eyes.
Yeah, close your eyes.
Close your eyes.
Don't
Major,
look, don't look.
Don't,
major spoiler alert here,
oh,
right?
don't look. Just put your
Oh,
hand.
there we go.
So here we are, opening slide, just the images of the most recent 2 books on color. And so Rorschach drawing, right? You're supposed to be able to look into a Rorschach drawing and from your unconscious mind, see forms, be guided into meaning from the abstract, meaning perhaps from the meaningless. But that is what we do as human interpreters of what comes our way, including color. So I wanted to start with black today because I believe we mentioned this before, black and white are the two first color terms to enter human languages around the world, pretty much without exception. This is from two really amazing studies done by two professors at Stanford, Berlin and Kay. And over again, we find that somehow this duality of dark and light, black and white, they are the first encounters, first articulations of color in every human language. As one of the most ancient notions of color, black, of course, is an amazingly complex and multi-layered and sometimes even conflicting source of meaning. So let's start at the beginning, right? The book starts off with the Big Bang, which I do skip some things along the way between the Big Bang and the present, thank God. But the Big Bang is one way to think of black. The moment before time begins is a perfectly balanced, full of potential nothingness. It's not threatening, it's full of promise. It's not empty, it's full of everything. It's not nothing, it's the moment before everything. And as I started to weave through some of the metaphors that we commonly use, I came across some information about how the word void in Genesis has come to mean what it means. We associate it with chaos. We associate it with confusion. We associate it with sort of a threatening version of nothingness. But this is more recent. In the very beginning, the Rig Veda refers to the primordial darkness as the dark wrapped within the dark. It's steady and stable. It's just profound. The original Greek word chaos, which is how the void was translated, merely comes from a word that means the gap. It's an opening into which we peer. It's, again, full of potential as far as I'm concerned. So we see these metaphors of darkness as a source of everything in so many of the world's cosmologies. In Akuma cosmology, for example, there are two twins who gestate in the darkness, and it is their birth that is the beginning of all things. I could go on and cite so many different ways in which the darkness is the beginning in world cosmologies. If we just look away from a more recent edition of all the scary stuff, it's just profoundly positive. It's amazing. One of the ways in which the darkness is the source of everything is, of course, human life, right? We gestate new life in the darkness of the womb. And the ancients recognize this. There are so many beautiful ways in which darkness is used as a symbol of the beginning. So there are many forms of pottery, which clearly depict the curve of pregnancy, maybe with a hand, maybe with a navel, and the emptiness within those pots ritually describes where we all start. There are some interesting ways in which darkness is a source of life in Egyptian thought, ancient Egyptian thought. Osiris was, of course, a murdered god, right? Just a little bit like Jesus. And it is his sister who gathers together the pieces. He's murdered by his brother Seth, who gathers together the pieces of his body and somehow brings them back to life. So Osiris is a symbol of rebirth and of life. There's a certain period of ancient Egyptian history where people were buried with coffins shaped like Osiris, filled with the rich, dark earth of the Nile, which was seeded with food, plants, and flowers, so that this notion of eternal rebirth could follow the person into the grave. So black is a symbol of life. Sleep and night, right? Black is also something that we need in order to facilitate sleep. When darkness falls, our hormonal balances change, and some of the stress hormones fade into the background. Our brain stops processing quite a lot of background information and helps us settle down with a pulse of melatonin into a restful sleep. Without sleep, what happens to us? We don't think right. We become uncoordinated. We become unhealthy, right? Living too long without proper sleep really does your health a disservice. So black is a source of nourishment. Night is a source of nourishment. Also sharing the screen is an image by an Italian artist. His name is Nicola Samori. And night is also what we attribute as a source of nightmares, right? When we settle down and let the conscious world go, we are faced with possibly unresolved trauma, nightmare. That unresolved trauma, according to Jung, can be not just personal, but cultural, right? We can be struggling with things that we cannot handle from a cultural basis, as well as life events and life frights. So is dark restful, or is dark a time when the things that we're most vulnerable to come out of the closet to haunt us? Or is it both? I like to point out that dark as a source of things that haunt us, that's actually our problem, right? That's not a problem with the dark. That comes from within us. Black and mourning also have a very important association. And this dates back at least to Roman times, if not before, where the toga pula, pula means darkish, the toga pula is worn by families in private as they mourn their loved ones. The toga pula was most likely made from naturally dark fibers of, black and dark brown, but there's some reason to believe that it could have been dyed to get darker as well. The toga pula was worn in private because in the classical world, unseemly displays of emotion were not meant to be part of public life. They were seen as disordering of the public peace, of a sense of society and progress. So mourning was definitely a private affair. But obviously that changes over time, doesn't it? Mourning becomes more and more of a ritualized and very, very public affair. And you see here on the right, a mourning ensemble from Victorian England. Mourning customs in Victorian England were incredibly complex. In many ways, they're centered on a textile called black crepe, which is a heat and chemically treated silk fabric, expensive. It was matte finish. Some of the chemicals that were used in this process were very toxic. And wearing this black crepe for the required year and a day of all black often affected women's health negatively. The veils in particular were, even in those days, known to cause sores and eye problems as the chemicals would gas off directly onto a woman's skin. Super uncomfortable, super profound. Why the fixation on crepe as a matte finished fabric, and bombazine, which is a wool and silk blend, also matte finished? It was seen to suck in light and represent the emotional state of the widow. Interestingly, men did not exist within the same strictures. If you were a man, you could get away with a few weeks of mourning. That could be cut down if you remarried quickly. So the imbalance between the performative aspect of mourning expected of a woman and that of for a man was really quite imbalanced. But an interesting thing happens as a result of mourning, particularly for women of means. For as long as their money lasted, or as long as their single status lasted, they were in charge of their own money and their own estates. And the legal structures of Victorian England made it quite clear that that woman was autonomous, more likely to be autonomous. And the period of mourning was often the first time that a woman made spending decisions, clothing decisions, lots of decisions without any male supervision. So mourning emporia become, where you would buy your mourning clothes, would become a place for exercise of taste, exercise of will, a very interesting and empowering sort of situation. Black, right alongside mourning, also could symbolize a sense of sexuality and transgression. So think of Madame X on the left. That's a John Singer Sargent portrait of Amélie Gautreau, I believe. And she was a known racy lady. She henna'd her hair. She wore lavender tinted powder to increase her paleness. And she had herself painted in this super racy dress for the time, right? Held in place just by a gold chain and not held in place particularly well, I might point out. Anytime a woman wore black out of mourning, it was considered a little bit beyond the pale and a little bit provocative. So you see here the two photos on the right. This is Vivian Leigh as Anna Karenina and Keira Knightley as Anna Karenina in a more recent adaptation of Leo Tolstoy's novel. it's been a while since I read Anna Karenina, but I do remember that in the opening scenes, Anna, who's a married woman, decides not to wear a demure pale lavender gown, but rather a striking black gown. And it is this sense of scandal and breaking the rules that attracts Count Vronsky, I believe, who becomes her disastrous boyfriend and ruins her entire life and provokes her committing suicide at the end of the book. So black was definitely seen as something a bit racy and rule-breaking, even as it was within the capsule of mourning. Coco Chanel harnesses all of this. The mourning of World War I, the mourning of the cholera epidemic, her own mourning because of the car crash of her beloved English boyfriend, Boy Capel, all feed into the creation in 1926 of the first little black dress. And the drawing on the left is from American Vogue, I believe. It appeared in American Vogue first and then French Vogue. And the idea that this easily accessorizable garment that hid a woman's worst features and through necklines and cuff lines and hemlines revealed a woman's best features, the idea that this was something that every woman ought to have became, as you all know, incredibly powerful. Mixed in with mourning and sex and autonomy is also the idea that black became the working woman's wardrobe, because synthetic blacks laundered well and allowed working women to come up with a pretty crisp, efficient wardrobe that was dependable for not too much money. So think of all these things that Chanel channels into this little black dress. It's really kind of amazing. And that little black dress, of course, sticks with us in so many forms in every single decade since. So we have Sophia Loren in the 50s. We have Audrey Hepburn in her Givenchy dress from Breakfast at Tiffany's from the 60s. And I just put in the safety pin dress here, Liz Hurley wearing this in 1994. It's a Versace design that she made famous in one wearing to a movie premiere with her boyfriend, Hugh Grant. Think of the parallel between her and Amélie Gautreau. Really astonishing how these metaphors of revealing skin, concealing skin, very efficiently done in black, I might add, stick with us. So let's go to all the way from the safety pin dress to Saint Benedict of Norcia, 5th or 6th century monk. Black also has a religious life, as we know. So let's talk about that for a minute. So Saint Benedict set up the rules for communities of religious people in the 6th century, emphasizing use of natural fibers. He did not mandate black, but he wanted it simple, he wanted it natural, and he wanted it locally available. No dyeing. That was seen as a layer of deceit, right? Adding color was seen as a layer of fiction and deceit. Black becomes the official color of most monkish life in Western Europe through the second Benedict, Benedict of Agnan, who's seen there in the middle. Charlemagne asked him to reform religious life and make it more uniform. So he mandates black habits for the Benedictines, which were almost universally accepted, except for the white robe monks. Oh gosh, whose order just escapes me a little bit. They bickered back and forth for quite a long time and they never really settled it. And then here you see Hildegard von Bingen, who also was in religious life at about that time in her black. Black moves beyond the Catholic Church. I just should throw in that black, because of the Benedictines' success and luxury as an imperial, as endorsed by the Holy Roman Emperor, and their learnedness by establishing some of the most ancient universities across Western Europe, black starts to achieve a sense of prestige and seriousness, rather than the original renunciation of the first Benedict. Martin Luther was an Augustinian monk. As an Augustinian, he wore black clothing. So when he decides to break apart Christendom with his theses, he doesn't give up his Catholic habit. He wears black for the rest of his life in public and in private. And John Calvin maintains this sense of black as serious, as accomplished, as learned, very interesting, right? The major carryover from the Catholicism that they were rebelling against. Black as a serious color of religion and of learning. It also becomes a color of taste at a certain point. So the fellow on the left here is Baldassare Castiglione, who wrote a book called The Courtier in the 15th century. And He advised on all manners of tastes and all manners of manners and learning. He was trying to describe what a perfect gentleman should be. And in conflicting styles from very fancy France, from overly peacocky Germany, from very austere and Catholic Spain, he chose Spanish black as his preferred color for the gentleman of cultivation and taste. And you see it played out in some of the most beautiful portraiture of men. These are both Bronzino portraits that I happen to admire. It does put some emphasis on detail, embroidery, the slashing of sleeves, belts and accessories. So there's a vocabulary of luxury and richness that grows up around what was once plain austere black. This in turn comes from, we'll just talk about this super briefly. We talked about this before. This is Philip the Good, Duke of Burgundy, who was, his father was assassinated by French rivals. He went into mourning black and never left it for the rest of his powerful and luxurious life. His great grandson, who's on the right, this is Charles, becomes Holy Roman Emperor in his day, from the ruling as a Habsburg from the court of Spain. And it is his influence that takes black all over the world through all the colonies of Spain and Austria as a power color. This super powerful court was focused on black. And it achieves this, which we still see today, this reputation as a force of power and influence, something inexorable, unavoidable. Black is a symbol of power, even to groups trying to change the rules of power. So you see, these are black shirts from Mussolini's time in fascist Italy. In the middle, right, leather-wearing S&M rebels from the 70s. On the right, punk rebels from the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. Black as a uniform color is a symbol of rebellion and setting yourself apart. It continues to draw and elaborate on its vocabulary of color, including the political and social revolutions of the 60s and 70s around race. So we see Huey Newton on the left in his Black Panther garb. And I have a passage in the book about how the paramilitary look was arrived at in the Black Panther movement. It didn't just happen. It was a series of decisions that reflected their circumstances and the kind of image and power they wanted to project. Super powerful, still endures, I think, visually as a symbol of power. And you start to have a reclaiming of the word black in this time with Black power, black is beautiful. I put James Brown in here because of his wonderful song. Those lyrics just flew out of my head. But so black accumulates even more power and influence around it through these things. I do spend some time talking about history of Black people in Europe and the United States. And I note that we are now kind of in a time where the search for nuance may be the most useful way to think about Black in the context of society. I note that Carrie James Marshall, whose picture is here on the left, very consciously uses a range of Black pigments to create a non-monolithic, chromatically diverse image of Black. And he does that in a search for individuality. Hold on, I'm going to read you his quote. A chromatically diverse Black that is not fixed, unmalleable, and singular. He wants us to look at the individual. He wants us to see the depth and profundity of every individual through his use of all these different Black pigments that are historic and modern, natural and synthetic. Super great. And this is, of course, a portrait, picture by Amy Sherald on the right, doing a little bit the same job. Okay, we're going to speed it up. Red. Mark Rothko red. Red is the first, after black and white, is the next color term to enter human languages. And of course, it's as contradictory and profound and confusing and bizarre as we are. So let's take a quick spin through red. Ancient color, red ochre, used in cave art, used to color figurines. Why? Probably because it looks like blood. And our friend Heidi Gustafson notes that when you spit in red ochre or add milk to it or other human fluids, it just seems to come to life in a way that resembles blood in a really profound way. So symbol of life, symbol of fertility. The Venus of Willendorf, the woman of Willendorf, as it's known now, was coated in red ochre. So that's a 25,000-year-old, possibly fertility token. No one's really quite sure. Her sisters here in the center and to the right are part of this band of Neolithic art that comes from the Alpine region up to Siberia. And you'll see some great similarities here. No one really knows what these figurines mean, but they do seem to point to some fertility aspects. Red continues to denote fertility. There are many icons to indicate pregnancy, facilities for pregnant people, restrooms for pregnant women, et cetera, et cetera. Generally, the colors are red. In the middle, you see Pantone's period red, which they developed with a Swedish company called Intima. And I was telling Amy and Kathy earlier that the press that was generated by this a couple of years ago, the introduction of period red, was so forthright and positive and so clearly stated the need for a way for us to talk about menstruation without hesitation, with frankness, with openness, to really open the dialogue. And there are tons of statistics about how menstruation and fertility are very hard to talk about, particularly in the presence of men, right? So this was really an attempt to just straightforwardly give people a way to discuss it. I put in the red eggs here too, because the red egg is a super ancient symbol of life and fertility. Across the Orthodox world in Europe, it's still in play all the way through to China. Another way in which blood and red bring themselves into our thinking has to do with the transformative ritualistic power of blood. So this image is from Theam ceremonies in India, very ancient, said to have Neolithic roots, where performers of low caste transform themselves into the gods through sacrifices. Some chickens are involved, and these elaborate, mostly red costumes are involved. And the theatrics of it, the power of it is just astonishing. The notion that anyone can be elevated to the status of God through the magic of blood is profound. And we can see it play out in our own culture, right? The notion that one person who died on the cross elevates the rest of us is still in our culture. So this is an image of the Holy Grail, right? Which touches on the blood of Jesus. And that blood can be expressed in matters of kingship. The divine blood of kings, right? This descends from Charlemagne, the 8th, 9th century, is still a factor. So the idea of red and kingly power is here shown. Charles II, whose father was beheaded, right? And he spent some time in France in exile. He reestablishes the British throne in the 1600s. There's Napoleon, who created his own empire out of whole cloth. And on the right is a Nigerian monarch. There's no constitutional power there, but these traditional figures are still very much respected and revered. And I love the use of color in all three of these, but especially in the one on the right. Red also, I think, maybe in part because of this sort of kingly power, also denotes luxury. The difficulty of achieving a really piercing red through kermes, right, which is very hard to harvest and hard to come by, and cochineal, which was expensive because of the Spanish monopoly on it in the early colonial period, definitely denotes luxury. And many sumptuary laws around Europe, England, Venice, other places, reserved red for the use of the upper classes. Let's talk about some of the negative things about red. I mean, you could say luxury is also negative, but blood and war. This is a Rubens depiction of the Roman god of war, Mars, definitely tricked out in red almost all the time. And it stays with us to this day. This is a Chinese god of war, Beijing opera mask. Thor always has red. This creepy depiction is from a game called Gods of War, an online game. There's always red involved in the symbolism of war. The negative side of bloodshed, right? Red is used in dress uniforms around the world. This is a Thai dress uniform. Thailand has many beautiful colors in their dress uniforms. I would add magenta, lime. It's a peacock of splendor. It's splendid, but I did like this image. So the ritualistic notion of going to war, this is society condoning murder, if you will, right? This is organized murder, sending people out to war. And it's amazing that the ritualistic nature of red still plays such a big role. Red is a symbol of danger. So it is said that red as a symbol of danger has its origins in warships that flew a red flag to signal they would give no quarter. There would be no surrender. They would fight to the death. And that red flag is said to be the roots of the stop sign, the red light, and all the ways that we use red as a warning symbol. And red as a symbol of beauty. It's a Guatemalan textile on the left. These are Uzbek textiles on the right. Red as a woman's symbol of beauty touches back to fertility, but it's really powerful. I cite some studies in the book about how a woman wearing red lipstick is 30-some% more likely to be approached in a bar and more quickly than women who don't wear red. Many studies trying to quantify the lure of red for men. One of the studies says that men wearing red are perceived as more powerful and possibly more influential and protective, but not more likable and not necessarily more attractive. So it doesn't work the other way. But look at how often we use red as a symbol of attractiveness and beauty in modern culture. So this is Dorian Lee, the world's first supermodel in a 1950s Revlon campaign. Think back to all those images of Jane Russell and Elizabeth Taylor with their super dark hair, their super pale skin, and their super red lips, right? We knew what red was about in those contexts. Grace Jones, definite revival of red as a beauty color in the 80s. And I think we're seeing the same revival of it now as a beauty color. And of course, super influential in fashion. It never really goes away. I've heard American retailers say that red is the only color that you can absolutely count on selling. Blue has been giving it a run for its money lately, but red for sure. Let's just do a quick spin through red as the color of hearts. Early on in European art history, can you see this little blob that this figure of charity is handing to an angel? This upside down pine cone shaped little blob was one of the earlier depictions of the heart as a seat of generosity and emotion. It takes several hundred years to get to this late medieval, early Renaissance manuscript where you see the hearts with wings. This is a series of love poems that a man wrote to his lover who eventually became his wife. It's a gorgeous series of illustrations and a fun set of poems. But this is the first time we see the heart organized with two lobes in red with a distinct point at the middle. It makes its way through playing cards and tarot cards to become an emoji. Think back to Milton Glazer's I Love New York logo from the 70s. This was a compelling, influential design that just took the world by storm. It still exists unchanged all these years later. And you can argue that it is a channel for the way that hearts are in our visual culture now every day with Instagram and Facebook and texting and all the rest of that sort of thing. Billions and billions of hearts every single day. All right, that was a quick spin through red. Let's do an equally quick spin through blue. I love blue. I have blue, green, gray, and white as my favorite colors, black, sometimes purple, but blue is pretty much up there. And I come by it honest. This is a sculpture that my mother made while she was pregnant with me. I still have it. And so blue is lodged in there somewhere. Much like you all, I think I come to a deep affection for blue through indigo and its use around the world as maybe the most beautiful textile dye ever. All the different layers, the way it wraps around fibers so that you get a little backlit of light coming through the undyed core of fibers in certain techniques, the way it wears, the way it ages, it's so incredibly beautiful. It's been with us a long time. The oldest fragment of indigo we know is 6,500 years ago from Huaca Prieta. There are textile fragments, probably from woad, not necessarily from the indigo plant, from the Sinai Peninsula. It's a copper mining settlement at least 3,000 years ago. The Telem civilization in Mali, the Bandiagara escarpment, was doing beautiful designs with woven indigo, tie-dyed indigo, dipped-dyed indigo. It was as early as the 12th century. You have these beautiful dye pits in Nigeria dating back to at least the 1500s in Kano. Egypt was making synthetic blues, making blues out of lapis and using it at least 4,500 years ago. Love the night sky design here. Blue, I think part of the lure for me is that it refers to the place where the gods live in most of our thinking. This Sumerian statuette, 2000 BCE, so that's 4,000 some years ago. The Sumerians did not have blue eyes. This statuette's eyes are blue because this person is in the temple perceiving the divine. And so, of course, his eyes would have been wide with the color of the sky, wide with awe, full of the presence of the divine. And out of all the choices of semi-precious material and precious material, out of all the synthetic pigments that they could have used to paint these eyes, it was only lapis that would do. Egypt has a similar fixation with lapis, although this is a synthetic ceramic dye. I love this precursor to Mary, the Queen of Heaven, nursing and caring for her child, right? This is Isis caring for her child. So these metaphors of the murdered God and the Divine Mother have immediate precedent in Egyptian culture. And then you have the Virgin Mary. If you're interested in blue, there's an amazing book by a French writer called Michel Pastoureau, Blue, the History of Color. And he makes a compelling argument that blue comes from not a huge position in Western culture to an amazingly influential position throughout the Gothic era, where blue stained glass, blue pigment in the form of lapis lazuli and other things are made available to creators, and you see them do the most amazing things with it. Almost always promoting some sense of holiness and divinity, or wealth, or both, because lapis was so expensive. Blue takes on the virtues of the Virgin Mary in many ways in Western culture: fidelity, dependability, loyalty, depth, right? Seriousness. It just doesn't go away. It's really, really amazing. Blue takes a leap into the political realm, the powerful realm, when the Capetian dynasty takes it up as their official color. So you see Louis IX, who becomes a saint, wearing it at his coronation. You see his mother, who's in the top right, Blanche of Castile, also adopting it as her color. It becomes, blue with the fleur-de-lis on the ground of blue becomes a symbol of France. It's an alternative to the imperial red of their rival states around them. And so you start to see this blue-red division coming up, right? Blue and red were not opposing colors until you start to see this whisper of rivalry and distinct competition come in. Blue gets used to denote quality, beginning with the Order of the Garter, 1348. Only very close companions of the monarch would be admitted into the Order of the Garter, and everybody does get a little blue garter to wear. Still exists. I think there are only 26 members, the monarch plus the heir and 24 others. There's an annual procession. You can see them all take a little walk around Windsor Castle. The Order of the Holy Spirit is taken up by the French. There was an Order of St. Michael with a white badge, which started to open up to merchants, God forbid, and people who were not necessarily noble. So the Order of the Holy Spirit is created by Henry III, and they mimic the blue of the garter. And these things digest down to the idea of the blue ribbon, right? The blue ribbon as the mark of distinction. So you see Pabst blue ribbon prior to Prohibition used millions of yards of blue silk ribbon in their packaging of every bottle. It's now just a printed symbol, but 4H blue ribbons and all the rest of this, I think, come to us from these uses of blue as a denoter of quality. Blue is also a working person's color, isn't it? And this comes from the workwear fabrics of Nîmes in France in the 15th century and Genoa in the 16th century. So denim jeans come from Serge de Nîmes, denim from de Nîmes, and jeans from Genoa. And this tradition of deep blue workwear is, to this day, so profound. How many billions of pairs of blue jeans are sold every year around the world? It's remarkable how this has reached every corner of the world. In the US, we have a special affection for denim because it's the garb of cowboys. It starts off as the garb of gold miners in the West. Levi Strauss did not invent blue jeans or blue overalls or denim. He was really just the first merchant. He worked with a German tailor named Jacob Davis, who needed some help getting a patent for his rivet attached pockets. And it's the partnership between Davis and Levi Strauss, that brings the blue jean to the fore. Hollywood loved the blue jean, looked good on screen, looked good on its long, tall, rangy cowboys like Gary Cooper here. Cowboys were very unlikely to have worn jeans. They would have been wearing secondhand clothes, they would be wearing leathers. Even the gold miners had more than blue jean available to them. Sometimes there was just sort of a dull beige bleached fabric. There were olive greens, there were browns, but denim really took off, I think, in part because of Hollywood. Hollywood takes the idea of the individualist bound by morality in the cowboy plays, cowboy plots of Zane Grey and then Hollywood writers into a level of sex and attractiveness, mostly through James Dean and Marlon Brando. When Marlon Brando appears on screen as Streetcar Named Desire in his skin-tight blue jeans and his tank top t-shirt there, a revolution happens. Sex is added to the vocabulary of jeans. It's no longer just a straightforward working man's costume. It's a lot of other things too. I tell the story in the book about the costume designer for the Broadway production of Streetcar Named Desire. She pinned Brando as tightly as she could into 7 different pairs of jeans, then shrank them with 24 hours in a hot water wash and a dryer. And he loved it. And he's a method actor, right? He actually made her cut the inner pockets out of the jeans because he said Stanley Kowalski, as a true animal, would have loved to stick his hands in his pockets and give himself a little feel. So that's our racy tidbit for the day. Obviously, in our own memory, Brooke Shields and the skin-tight Calvin Kleins were also super provocative, weren't they? They brought that notion of the tight blue jean and sexuality into another era. By the time the 70s come around, the cowboy and blue jeans start to acquire the more skeptical, more complicated, more socially uncertain plots of the 70s. And blue jeans start to become, think of it, the acid washing, the aging, the fascination with vintage, that all happens in conjunction with plots about the West that started to acknowledge racism, colonialism, economic domination, immorality. They drop the romance of Gary Cooper and John Wayne and those early cowboys and take on a much more modern and skeptical sensibility. And now blue jeans are taking on debate that's happening today. So this is Lizzo demanding to be considered beautiful no matter what your stereotypes of beauty could be. Harry Styles demanding the right to dress as femininely as he wishes to and still be center stage, completely credible, completely dominant in the pop scene. Downsides of blue: depression, chilliness, cold, right? That's part of blue's negative portfolio. I argue, maybe not overtly, but definitely consistently in the book, that every color has its positive and negative poles. And so we just touch on some of blues here. The blues. How did the blues get their name? There's definitely emotion and suffering. There's also an insistence on connecting performer and audience in a really intimate way. Why are they called the blues? Some people think that it comes from the phrase blue devils, which was an old English way of describing hangover. I don't think that's quite enough of an explanation. There's too much going on with the blues, with catharsis and connection and artistry and innovation for that to really be enough for me. But that's the only explanation I could find as I did my research. One thing that's really quite amazing about blue, I think of it often as the color of the future. From a physics point of view, objects that are approaching us take on a blue cast, right, through the refraction of light. Objects receding from us take on a red cast through the refraction of light. I love the idea that blue is a color of the future. it invites me to think about the future as a contemplative, constructive place. It invites me to think that we might wake up and treat our planet as this gorgeous, fragile blue marble that was first shown to us thanks to NASA in the late 60s and early 70s. I like to think that the future is as constructive and stable and sincere as blue generally is. So I find that notion very comforting. All right, that's the end of my remarks. Sorry if I took too long, but gosh, it's hard to stop at a certain point, right?
Oh, Keith, that was amazing and
No,
so interesting. And oh my God, taking us through all of that history. I had like 1,000 questions about, okay, they're wearing this color and it was so hard to dye. How did they do it? But I'm going to turn it over to Amy. Amy, go for it.
thanks, Kathy. Keith, you so need a glass of water. I feel so bad.
I didn't bring one. It's
Oh
okay.
no,
I'll
I
make
always
two.
make sure.
I'll
Okay,
make
I
two.
forgot to remind you. Okay, I'm gonna dive in. Keith, in your research, did you come across any physiological research you can share about why particular colors are attractive to humans?
It's super interesting. I did as much reading as I could about the idea of color therapy, chromotherapy.
Mm.
And I have to tell you, at the end of the day, the only passages I believed to be true came from an examination of color in architectural design, the design of environments. And this writer had made an effort to observe people in red environments, blue environments, yellow environments. And the conclusion was every color has a benefit. Red makes you pay more attention, makes you more alert. Blue might calm you down. Green might make you feel meditative. Yellow might make you feel bright and amused. But too much of any color is negative. Monotony is negative to the human experience. We need variety. And my own thinking about, who we were as hunter-gatherers and why color as a tool with which to perceive the world is so powerful. We are trained to perceive difference and change and evolution, right? So I think there's something within us that resists sameness. So I think there's no bad color, just as there's no perfect color, but you can have too much of a good thing.
So, quote of the day, Keith Recker.
Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering this next question too. How did the monks get black cloth if they couldn't dye it?
So the reading that I've done indicates that the way you would get black before logwood enters global commerce in the early-ish colonial era was that you would have to dye something as completely with madder as you could, and then as completely with woad as you could. And that the layering of those two color systems could produce black. It laundered very poorly, which for a long time until logwood comes makes black a color of a certain kind of elitism, right? Because you really couldn't, it crocked, it fell apart with a launder. It was very expensive too, in part because of the materials involved, but also you generally had to cross guilds. It was very unusual that you'd have a group of dyers who could dye red and dye blue. The laws generally kept those things apart. So you had to cross the road and have two workshops involved, which would also increase the price of the fabric. But Kathy, does that bear out with your understanding of it? The layering of those colors is what would produce a black.
Yeah, because woad, it has such a yellow, greeny undertone, and madder, depending on how you dye it, could be almost purplish red. So then you would get those almost a complementary color. And they could also have called black something that we don't perceive as black today, right?
Yeah. And even the painting of those clothing, the paintings in which you see all that black clothing could have been an idealized depiction, right? Could have been black enough for wear, but of course, if you're going to immortalize it in a beautiful painting, you really take it all the way. These are just hypotheses though, right? We have to admit, right? The textile arts are understudied, I believe, right? Across the board. And so really great, solid answers, I'm sure, exist, but I don't know that they abound, if you will.
It's, it's 1 o'clock, but I'm gonna keep going with some questions. So sorry for those people that have to go, but we're gonna keep going for another couple minutes. Let's see. Can you talk a bit about how we came to define the colors? I think you said black or light and dark were first and then red. Is that pretty much the case for most cultures?
Yeah, so Berlin and Kay indicate that we start with black and white, then we add red, right, as the third. Green and yellow take turns between the fourth or the fifth, but it's generally green and yellow that are the fourth and the fifth. Then there's blue, and then there's everything else. So there's that. In terms of how we think of color today, Isaac Newton's 1666 to 1670 invention of the rainbow is incredibly influential, of course, in our thinking today. And the notion that black and white are not colors is super influential. That was not the case before Newton organizes the rainbow. Black and white were very much colors. Indigo and orange should be very thankful to Newton for for elevating their importance in the structure of the spectrum, because he was looking for ways to mimic the 7 days of creation, the 7 notes of the musical scale, 7 days of the week. He wanted to see this gorgeous divine symmetry appearing, and so he insisted that there would be 7 colors. If you really look at the spectrum, it is very hard to pull out 7 colors. Linguistically, there are, like Russian has words for light blue and dark blue. And there are languages that have great distinct terms for light blue and dark blue, and that may be some justification for blue and indigo being paired in there. But it was Newton's fascination with the number 7 that brings us to 7. There's nothing absolute about that.
Okay,
I talk in the book a little bit about how, we think of the 7 chakras as being parallel to the 7 colors of the rainbow, right? And that each color denotes one of the chakra. That comes from the 1920s. When Eastern religion starts to be explored in a Western context, the marrying of Isaac Newton's rainbow with the chakra system happens, as far as I could tell, from the work of a man named William Ledbetter, who was an English writer who started to describe the chakras for Westerners and layered the rainbow on. I think the root chakra was often associated with red, but it doesn't go any further with that than that in the ancient texts.
Okay, let's see. How did we get to black tie and tuxedos as formal wear? Was that about power and status?
Yeah, for sure. It descends directly from black as a power color, right, with the Habsburgs. Black as a color of seriousness from the Benedictines through Martin Luther. And there's a whole phenomenon about the leaching out of color in male wardrobes, which still stays with us today, right? That's a great whole other realm, but it definitely comes from black as a power color, black as a religion color.
Fascination with black here. Okay, so last question. How did the painters get black?
The black of charcoal is the most ancient black, right? And in many ways, one writer suggested that you could think of that as the first synthetic pigment, right? The charring of wood as a man-made, human-made element could be considered the first synthetic pigment. Ivory black was the most popular form of black for painters, and that's carbonized ivory or carbonized bone, right? So that's in an oxygen-free environment, heating that up so that it's just charred, and it gets ground up and then suspended into a medium, whether that's linseed oil or wax, for caustic and caustic. Vine black, which is vegetable matter treated in the same way, heated up in an oxygen-free environment. Also, it's a nice warm black. You have modern blacks like Mars black, which is a caustic soda compound, which has some red overtones. You have perylene black, which is a hydrocarbon black, which has green undertones. So you've got all the natural stuff, which seems quite warm. Lamp black is not warm. Lamp black is chilly, and that's obviously burned hydrocarbon matter. Makes a great ink. The Gutenberg Bible was printed with lamp black ink. So the modern versions of black have these funny undertones, like the Mars black and Perylene black. And there's Vanta black. We continue to be fascinated with black. Vanta black is said to be the blackest black that you can achieve with what, 96% light absorption or something like that. So the search goes on.
All right. Well, thank you, Keith. That was informative, mind-blowing, thoughtful. I don't know.
Yeah, it was like a sort of a
everybody's-
Ferris wheel of history and color and
it's just the
meaning and
colors.
religion and power
Yeah.
and sex.
Oh,
No.
well, we can do it again with green, orange, and purple or something like that. You know,
Yeah,
yellow and purple.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
I would love
Thank
to do it.
you.
So don't forget, give us a push.
I just put it in the
Yes.
chat. I just put
Great.
that book, the pre-order, and your other book. They're both in the chat. And I also just put Keith's Instagram, the Chromo
good.
Sapien, in
Thank
there
you.
as well. So you can follow Keith on Instagram.
Yeah.
From a shipping point of view, I am told that books will hit the Publishers Warehouse on September 13th, and that they will be
Oh.
shipping out pre-orders like yours, right? Because you guys
Okay,
placed a
good.
pre-order
Mhm.
as quickly as humanly possible. So you won't have to wait till the end of October. It
Oh,
should
okay,
be-
great. That's
Should be in
good
your
to know.
hands by the end of September. I mean, as long as you
You
get
all
your
heard it
orders
here.
in. Yep,
Yeah.
right, exactly. You all could be
No hate
first.
mail, please. Good thing. I'm sure Keith has some good quote about good things come to those who wait. Or-
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Yeah. The corollary to that is you lag, you lose, right?
Amen to that. I'm more familiar with that one.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right, great. Well, Keith,
Thank you.
again, thank you. Such a pleasure.
For me too.
My head is spinning. All of those references to these historical books on Black and other colors and their meanings are just fascinating. And I'm sure deep color will be a super welcome addition to that library as well. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
All right, if you guys want to unmute yourselves,
Unmute.
thank you or hi, you're alive somewhere in the world.
Thank
Good to see
you.
you.
Maybe another day.
Thank you.
Good
I
to
wanted
see you
just to
guys.
ask a question, if that deep color will have other colors besides the white, black, and red and blue.
Yeah, we have 6 of Newton's colors. I didn't do indigo as separate. Right, so we have 6 of Newton's colors plus black, white, and pink. So there are 9.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Keith. That was awesome.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you all.
you.
Good to see you all.
Thank you.
was
Amazing, amazing.
It's Gina. I was wondering about the use of black wool, sheep's wool, or other types of animals' wools.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely in there, right? That Roman toga pula is said to have been made out of those dark wools. And you all know that's such an amazing graphic resource, right? The dark wools. So great. Yeah.
Thank you. It's a
Mm,
wonderful talk.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, everybody. I'm going to sign
Thank
off.
you. Bye.
Okay, Keith. Stay
Bye.
well. All
Thanks, Keith.
right. Thank you again.
All right, well,
Kathy, thank you, Amy.
you're
so
welcome.
welcome, you guys. Good to see all of you.
Yeah, and show up for that alum triformate talk next week. 300 people signed up in 2 days.
What?
Yeah, don't be nervous,
Okay.
but 300 people signed up.
Okay. We're not
Yeah.
nervous. Oh, hey, I'm going to stop recording because this is
Oh,
really
right.
off the cuff.
Off the cuff.
Off the cuff.